Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Jones. I am the Director of Education with the Oracle Applications and Technologies Users Group. I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar titled Secrets of Submitting a Winning Abstract at Ascend, hear from the experts. Quick reminder for today's webinar, you will be on mute throughout the session. However, you're welcome to send questions at any time through the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar, or you can put it in the chat as a Zoom webinar. We will handle questions maybe during the webinar or at the end, depending on when they come in and how we see them. We are recording this webinar. The recording will be available on the Ascend website. We'll also email out the slide deck to anyone that signed up for this webinar. And finally, I'd like to turn it over to kind of our moderator for this session today. He's a big supporter of the OATUG. He comes and speaks at every conference, at Ascend conference, which is fantastic. His name is Manish Naik, and he's on the OATUG co-chair of the Emerging Leaders. Take it away, Manish.
Thank you so much, Mike, for the kind words, and thank you for the warm welcome. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're joining us from. We thank you for your time in attending this webinar. My name is Manish Naik. I'm a Director of Industry Solutions at Infosys. And as Mike said, I'm also the co-chair of the OATUG Emerging Leaders Committee. A quick introduction about myself. I've been doing Oracle for the last 21 plus years. I wear many hats, ranging from program management to solution architecture to thought leadership. I'm also an Oracle ACE. I've been associated with OATUG for the last 15 plus years, and I'm happy to be a part of this webinar and many such initiatives within the OATUG. I would now like to request my co-panelists, co-presenters for the session to do a quick round of introduction, and then we will dive into the content of the presentation, please.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Manish. Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Edwards. I'm an HRIS analyst at EOG Resources. I'm an OATUG board member and also the Emerging Leaders Committee chair and on the governance committee for OATUG as well. I've been involved with OATUG for, I believe now it's been about 5 years when I made a career switch from teaching over to information technology and kind of getting into the Oracle world. And since then, I've been pretty involved. That said, I'll pass it over to Mohan.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mohan Dutt. I'm part of the OATUG board and also the board secretary. And it has been my honor to be the Ascend Agenda Chair for OATUG for the last 3 years. And I'm looking forward to hundreds of presentation proposals from all around the world, and especially for the folks here today. And we want all of you to have your abstract selected. So that's why today's session is how to submit a winning abstract.
Thank you, Mohan. So without further ado, let's dive into the agenda right away. So we will start off with the overview of this session. What are the objectives for this session? What are the messagings that we are trying to cover as a part of this session? Then we will cover the call for presentations process at a high level. Now, we understand the audience for this session could be a mix of people who are going to present for the first time, and then people who have been submitting in the past as well, and are joining us to learn some more new tips and tricks. So we'll start from the basics. We'll cover the complete call for presentations process right from the beginning to give everyone an idea on what does it entail to, from the submission to the selection process. Then we will walk you through a step-by-step guide to submit like a pro. Now, if you go to the OATUG website or the Ascend website, you will find numerous instructions on how to submit an abstract. We are going to delve one step below that and cover what does it take to submit like a pro? What would help you to increase your chances of selection? And then we'll complement that with some practical submission tips, some do's and don'ts, some watch out items that you can look out for when you are trying to draft abstract. We do not want to keep this session purely theoretical, which is real proposal ideas, because that's the most commonly asked question that we get, that I want to submit for Ascend. I have some thoughts, but I'm stuck at an idea. So can you guide us on what ideas make the most sense? So we're going to give you with some ideas that you can go run with for this conference. And then we'll also cover the advantages of submitting for Ascend. What do you get in return for investing your time and effort for this prestigious event? So we will cover that topic. And finally, we will wrap with some important information, some key deadlines, timelines about the Ascend 2025 conference. And we will try to cover this content in the next 45 to 50 minutes so that we leave the last 10, 15 minutes for Q&A, because that's one of the goals for today's webinar. We want to make it interactive. You have all the right people who you can ask the questions to. We've been involved in Ascend conferences for the last several years, and we are happy to help you and answer your questions. So we'll leave some room for that towards the end of the presentation. All right. So let's get started with the session overview. I'm not going to read through the slide, but I left this over here for a reason. This is the abstract and the objectives for this particular session. Just like any other session, for this session also, we had to submit an abstract and 3 learning objectives. So this gives you a real life example of how you would craft an extract, what are your punchlines, how you would curate your sentences, how you would back them up with real life practical objectives. So we will not go into the slide, but the purpose of this is anybody looking at the slide deck kind of has a ready reference. You go through the tips and tricks, and then you have a complete reference on how an abstract and objectives can be drafted. So that's the purpose we are leaving the slide in, but we will skip that in the interest of time. Session objectives. So as I mentioned, we are going to start from the basics. So 101, we are assuming anybody looking at this presentation has never submitted an abstract before. You might have, but it's always good to start with the basics. So we'll start with that. Then we'll address the big question, the big dilemma of topic selection, because every year technologies change, technologies evolve, and so does the topics of interest for any Ascend conference. So how do I select a topic to begin with? We will try to cover that as a part of the presentation. One thing that we always try to convey to everybody is the Ascend User Conference is all about education, it's all about learning. So people attending the conference are looking for practical insights, are looking for real life experiences, along with trending technologies. Of course, they want to hear about new technologies, but if you have adopted that technology, if you have implemented that at your company or at your client, if you're a consultant, that's something that people are trying to look out for. They want to hear user stories. So what does it take to submit a winning extract? It's really simple. All it needs is a great idea. So once you have an idea, you back that up with great articulation skills, and there you have a winning abstract. Now, sounds simple, but there are some nuances associated with that, which is exactly what we want to cover in this part of the session. We will also give you some tips and tricks for drafting an impressive proposal, some do's and don'ts, based on the experiences from the past, based on our experiences. We would like to leave you with some tips and tricks that you can incorporate in your proposal as you're drafting it. Now, once you've done all of that, you have a topic in mind, you have the abstract created, what additional steps can you take to increase your chances of selection? So we'll cover that as well. And then finally, we want to leave you with some important information for all submitters, irrespective of whether you're an Oracle user or a consultant or an Oracle employee. This information is applicable for everyone. So we will cover that also. And then the $1 million question, cloud or e-business suite, what topic do you select and why? So we'll touch upon that as well. And lastly, as I said, we'll leave some room towards the end so that you can discuss with us, get first-hand perspective about our insights, and get all your questions answered with respect to submitting an abstract or a proposal for Ascend. Let's move on. Call for presentations process. So what are the different steps involved in the call for presentations process? So over the years, the number of submissions that we've been receiving for Ascend conferences have grown exponentially. And that's a great thing. That is exactly what we want. So we literally receive hundreds of submissions from users and consultants all over the globe. And when I say users and consultants, is because this conference is not just limited to Oracle experts or Oracle consultants. We also want to hear user stories. We want to hear end customers talking about their experiences. So we rightfully receive hundreds of submissions from all over the globe. And then OITUG members and volunteers vote on these proposals. So there's a rating system, there's a voting system linked to a rating system. Then depending upon how many votes you get and how the rating is calculated, the proposal with the highest number of votes or the highest rating gets selected, right? Once the proposal is selected, the submitters are notified by email. Now, unfortunately, if your proposal or one of your proposals does not get selected, you would get a reject notification as well. So, we have a slide which covers those timelines. So depending upon how the proposal voting and rating went, you will either get accepted or rejected. Then comes the fun, but the most difficult part, how to put us all into an agenda. Because out of these hundreds of submissions, a large number of submissions will get selected. And then we have to do, the OITUG agenda committee has to do a fair justice to all of them. So it's a 3.5-day conference. So how to pack so much content into a 3.5 day is a daunting task. But the OITUG leads do a great job of, accomplishing that. And then shortly you will have a detailed agenda with the session schedule, which in turn will also be available on the app and then help you curate your personal agenda for the conference. Let's move on to the next slide. So as Mike mentioned, all of you are on mute right now, but I'm sure you must be having some questions coming to your mind as we go through each of the slides. So I highly recommend putting them in chat or making a note of them, and then we will cover them towards the end. Okay. This is how I would summarize a submission process. 3 steps is all it takes. It's literally 3 steps. All you need at this point is is title, an abstract, and 3 learning objectives. There is a myth which some people think that you need the entire presentation, the entire artifact to be submitted at this stage. That is not the case. You just need these 3 things to begin with, and if your proposal is selected, which we really hope it does, then you would go about creating the complete slide deck and then submitting it into the conference portal a few days before the Ascend conference. But at this point in time, you just need these 3 things. Title, there is a character limit of 125. For the abstract, it's 800 characters. And for objectives, it's 200 characters each. And there is a disclaimer here on the slide. There is a slide limit that is strictly enforced. The submission proposal is designed in such a manner that as you type or write your title or abstract, it will count the number of characters. So it tells you out of 125 how many you've consumed. Once you run out of that limit, that's it. It will not let you enter even a single character after that, right? So you avoid the risk of getting truncated. It enforces that character limit. And this character limit has to be adhered to. You cannot go beyond that. So let's cover each of these 3 topics in detail. Step 1, a catchy title is half the battle won. Because that's the first thing that anybody can look at, even the selection committee, and even people who are looking at the agenda and want to come to your session, the first thing that they will look at is the title. So we recommend using striking words or phrases. And as I said, we're going to back everything up with real examples, not just theory. So there's a slide coming up right after this where we have examples of some catchy titles which have been selected in the past. So use striking words, use catchphrases. If you're talking about a success story, if you're talking about a customer case study, a point of view, add that in your title. Literally spell that out. It's a success story. It's a customer case study. It's a user experience, because that tells the audience and that tells the selection committee that you have a great story to tell. And it is a practical experience. It is not just theory, which gets more points, which get more brownie points in your favor. So spell it out in your title. I know it's tough with 125 characters, including these many characters, which would be about 10, 15 characters itself, but be creative, try to include that, and then that increases your chances. Avoid jargon. Use generic verbiage. So just go, my 2 cents on this is go with the thought process that anybody that is coming to your session is a layman. They are not familiar with the typical Oracle terminology. So we as Oracle consultants or Oracle experts who have been doing this for years together have a tendency to assume that people know all the acronyms, people know all the jargons, right? But please avoid. Use generic verbiage, keep the language very, very simple. That helps, even in selection and also for the audience to comprehend better with your session. The next one is also very important. Spell out abbreviations for the same reason. And something that is obvious to you might not be obvious to the audience. POV, no, call it out as point of view. OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So spell out all these abbreviations to make understanding for the audience much better. Avoid company names, because we do not want these conferences, these sessions to be sales pitches. So avoid any company names, be it your name or your customer name if you're a consultant. Use profiles. So a large manufacturing conglomerate with operations in 100 countries, right? The world's largest distributor of FMCG goods. That's perfect. You can use these kind of profiles to make your pitch more powerful. That tells the selection committee that, number one, you're telling a story, but you're telling a story about a company or an organization which has significant presence. So that even makes it more important. So use profiles, back it up with some numbers, but avoid company names at any cost. The second last one is one of my favorites. So incorporate venue theme if possible. Now this year the conference is happening in Orlando. Last year it was in Vegas. So if somehow you're able to incorporate the theme of the venue, like Disney, when somebody talks about Orlando, the first thing that comes to your mind is Disney. When you talk about Vegas, it's beds and shows and stuff like that, right? So if you're able to incorporate the theme into the title, it automatically makes it much catchier. So that's something that we would also recommend. Finally, make a statement to impress the selectors and the audience. You have two milestones to cross: impress the selectors, get selected, and then impress the audience so that they come to your session. So try to make the best use of your title and achieve this particular requirement. Again, to mention, 125 characters is all you have, so be creative and then pack a lot of punch in this title. As I said, we are giving you some examples of catchy titles. So highlighted some keywords here. Florida oranges. This kind of goes back to what I was saying about the theme. On that particular year, the conference happened in Florida. And it was in Hollywood, Florida. So somebody used the title Florida oranges, word Florida oranges in their title. The next one is quite intriguing. 21 ways to eat a frog. Not literally. If this was a session on professional development on how you can have different ways to achieve the same thing, how you can have alternate approaches. So somebody looking at the catchphrase, that 21 ways to eat a frog, that immediately makes them interested in the session. And then there are some more examples here. We have customer case study in the title itself. There is a jargon here, Kaizen, but we have explained what the jargon means. Spelled out an abbreviation over here, again, venue theme over here, and then a catchy title. These are just few examples. If you go to the OATG knowledge base, you'll find hundreds and hundreds of titles that were selected in the past. So you have a lot of reference material to go and create one for yourself. Okay, let's move on to step number 2. So now the next step is packing the punch into your abstract. So you've successfully completed step 1, which is creating an impactful title. Now comes step 2, where you have to communicate what the title is intended for. So here we would recommend to incorporate a theme or a storyline. I mean, let's make sure that your abstract is not appearing disjointed. If there is a user story that you're telling, start with the problem statement. What is the why of the solution that you're trying to, or the user story that you're trying to tell, right? So start with the problem statement. Why did you go about that? Then follow through with the approach or the solution itself. So for example, you're telling about a customer case study where they were not doing so good on the shipment service level. So start with the statement saying that the shipment levels were below the benchmark, and then you implemented a modernized warehouse management system, and what entailed on that. Did you use cloud? Did you use EBS? So on and so forth. So start with problem statement, follow through with the solution approach. If you have any metrics, any measurable metrics, that's like icing on the cake. So if you can tell in this particular example, before the solution, the shipment metrics were a negative 5%, let's say, and after the solution was implemented, you were plus to 200%. That's perfect. So that immediately draws attention of the selection committee and also of the audience that your solution, the story that you're trying to tell, is really adding a lot of value, and you have numerical metrics, KPIs to support that. It is not just on paper, but it is actually been done and measured in industry. So please add KPIs and metrics if possible. And finally, focus on the learnings for the audience. What would the audience get for investing so much time, right? They're giving you their hour of their time. They're selecting to come to your session. So what are the learnings for the audience? What are the takeaways? If there is any leverageability aspect, I would recommend please focus on that, because audience is coming there to listen to your session, but also want to see if they can leverage that in their respective scenarios. So focus on the leverageability. Here, as I mentioned, 800 characters is what you have. So try to fit everything within 800 characters. It might take many takes, but don't give up. Especially if you're submitting for the first time, you may start with a rough draft and then have to refine that many times. Please be patient. I'm sure you'll get there. I'm speaking from my experience when I did this for the very first time, rather for the first few times. It was very, very tough, but then as you get into the the scheme of things, then it becomes just obvious. Okay, so how would you draft the abstract itself? So it is difficult to craft an entire paragraph at once, right? So start with bullet points. That's completely fine because this is a rough draft. This is all your rough work. You're not submitting it yet. So start jotting down bullet points as they come to your mind, right? And then weave them into complete sentences, and then weave that into a paragraph. So start with bullet points, sentences, and then paragraphs. Always start with an initial version. So although the abstract is for 800 characters, it might happen that the initial version is almost twice of that, even more than that. That's completely fine. An initial version doesn't have to adhere to the character limit. So start with an initial version and then keep on summarizing, right? I'm sure you are able to articulate a complete sentence, by lesser words, by using, other synonyms, abbreviations, so on and so forth. I'm sorry, not abbreviations, but synonyms. So try to start with an initial version and keep on summarizing, and then keep a tab as you summarize, right? Word gives us a very good tool called word count. So select your paragraph, go to review word count, and make sure that you're within 800 characters. If you're not, you'll have to get rid of some words, shelve some sentences, see what sentences make the most sense, what are not that important, and then, keep shelving them until you are within that 800 character limit. Now, in the process of doing that, please pay special attention to spellings, grammars, and punctuation. The selection committee gives this a lot of importance. So, because eventually what would happen is once your abstract is selected, this will be showcased on the Ascend conference and in the app. All the community, the Oracle community who is coming to the conference will look at the abstract. So this has to be perfect. You cannot have spelling mistakes, you cannot have grammatical errors. So if this is like a must-have requirement for the abstract, even if your abstract is powerful and conveying a great user story, if it has grammatical errors, unfortunately, it won't get selected. So make sure that you take care of this aspect very, very seriously. We already covered this in the title as well. Avoid any abbreviations or jargon. Explain very simple terminology. This, in fact, applies to all the three, to the title, to the abstract, as well as to the learning objectives. The next one here is also very important. No truncation. You have to have grammatically complete sentences, right? It cannot be bullet points. An abstract cannot be bullet points. It has to be full sentences. So do not truncate. If you're seeing that a particular word is much longer, consider synonyms. Use Google to find for synonyms and then incorporate them. But again, don't use very tough synonyms which are difficult to comprehend to. So use very simple synonyms is what I would say. We already covered the reusability aspect. That's something that audience is really looking forward to. Can they adopt this solution at their end? How easy is to reuse or adapt? So highlight that particular thing. And last but not the least, set personal deadlines. Now, we will cover the deadlines from a submission perspective on the OATG website, but that doesn't mean that you have to wait till the last day. In fact, we would recommend do not wait till the last day. Set personal deadlines. For example, your first pass at this should be ready by X date. Your second pass should be ready by Y date, and your final submission should be ready by Z. So set these deadlines and adhere to them, please. Set reminders in your phone, in your Outlook calendar, to keep reminding you that you have this on your to-do list and you have to complete this way ahead of the last day. That just helps you make a much better job than waiting till the last day. Okay, moving on, step number 3 is the learning objective. So now you have the title ready. Now you have your abstract ready. You have to further strengthen your case with the help of 3 powerful learning objectives. So 3 objectives is what you need, but all 3 are mandatory. The objectives cannot be a repetition of the content that you already covered in the title of the abstract. So you cannot draft something in the abstract and tell ChatGPT, hey, you know what, rewrite the sentence in a different manner for me, and then plug that into the learning objectives. That's not recommended. These should complement the abstract. So for example, again, I'm going back to the warehouse management example that I was quoting. Now you're showcasing that story. In the learning objectives, you can mention that audience will learn how this simple solution can be implemented at their respective organizations. Or you can also mention it also covers the integrations with XYZ system. So this is how you would complement your abstract with the learning objective. So the audience knows what more I'm getting when it comes to education or learning from this session, in addition to hearing to your user story. Emphasize on the key takeaways. As I said, the audience is investing 1 hour of their time. The selection committee is also investing a lot of time to browse through the abstracts and make a selection. So make sure you emphasize on the takeaways and highlight the value add. There are 200 characters per objective, and I'm actually thankful to the OATUG for increasing this limit. Back in the day, it used to be 100, then it got changed to 125, now it's 200. So in my opinion, there's ample room to convey the message. So try to make the best of this 200 character limit per objective. So you have 600, 200 times 3. I think it's good enough room to, make a good pitch when it comes to learning objectives. Never use NA, not applicable, to be decided, TBA, TBC, etc., etc. Since the objective is mandatory, all the 3 objectives are mandatory, you might be tempted to just put this in there so that the submission system accepts your submission, but that actually is detrimental in getting you selected. So highly recommended not to use these NA or not applicable and have some meaningful learning objectives. Do not abbreviate words. Again, same thing as applicable to title and abstract. And do not capitalize the word. It is a learning objective. It has to be a simple sentence in proper case. So do not abbreviate, do not capitalize each of the word that goes into your learning objectives. So that essentially covers the 3 steps that go into creating a submission. All right, so as I mentioned, we are going to complement this information with some submission tips, which will help you make your abstract even better and which will increase the chances of selection of your abstract. There is literally equal weightage to cloud and EBS. So even if you look at the agenda of any Ascend conference, right, you would see roughly 50% split between EBS and cloud sessions, maybe 5%, 10% here and there. So if you have a good story to tell, and if it's in EBS, go for it. I know cloud is the latest technology. Everybody's moved to cloud now. But the reality is there are several customers who are still on EBS. They may or may not be on their cloud migration journey. But as of now, their focus is EBS. They want to hear about EBS success stories. They want to hear about innovations in EBS. So if you have an EBS story to tell, go for it. And it will be, I promise you that it will be considered with the same weightage as a cloud topic is being considered. The second point here is also one of the most commonly question that we get asked is, does the topic have to be technology focused? The answer is no. I know trending technologies is you're tempted to present on. Everybody's always looking for trending technologies. But if you have a topic on professional development, if you're have a topic about project management, presentation skills, articulation, or in general, a point of view. It could be about how to successfully execute a production cutover for a client, which has presence in multiple countries. How would you execute an end-to-end large-scale Oracle program? That is fine. This topic is not technology related, but it's of utmost importance to the audience. So you would typically, when you see the agenda of an Ascend conference, you would see a variety of topics, including technical and non-technical. So do not restrict yourself to only technical topics. If you have a non-technical topic and you feel it is important, please go ahead and submit that. The character limit does not have to be fully consumed. I know we have 125, 800, and 200 characters for the 3 areas that we covered. You don't have to cover the entire character limit. See, the goal here is express more with less. So if you are able to convey your punch in less than 800 characters in the abstract, that's absolutely fine. I've seen abstracts of, say 4 or 5 sentences also getting selected because those 4 or 5 sentences were so powerful that it made the dent. It did its job to impress the selection committee and also to attract audience to your sessions. So you don't have to consume the character limit as long as you are confident and you are comfortable that the necessary messaging is getting completely conveyed with whatever characters you are using. Do I need to have a consultant or an Oracle or a customer co-speaker? It is preferred, but not mandatory, right? It's always good to speak in teams so that you get both or different perspectives. I have done that in the past many times. I've co-presented with my clients, with Oracle, and that does add a lot of value. But it's not a mandatory requirement. There are many sessions that you would see where there's only a single speaker. They have a good story to tell, and they submit it and it gets selected. But one highlight that I would like to call out here is end users have a higher chance of selection than consultants. The reason is the same as I mentioned before. People come to the Ascend conference to hear user stories, to hear user perspective. It's a user group conference, which is why the OATUG gives more importance, higher weightage for submissions from end users. And that's why naturally they have a higher chances of selection as compared to consultants. Doesn't mean that consultant and Oracle sessions don't get selected. You will have a good balance between both. Does it have to be an actual solution? Again, the answer is no. You can submit a point of view or proof of concept. Let's say you are just testing the waters. It's a very new technology that nobody has used it yet, and you did a proof of concept for a client or for yourself. It was highly successful. The actual implementation might follow a few months later, but you want to use this opportunity to highlight a proof of concept, go for it. Points of view, proof of concepts are highly welcome. As long as the topic is modern and current and something that would engage the audience, these POC, proof of concepts or point of views are also welcome for submissions. And then finally, can I submit more than one proposal? You absolutely can. There is literally in the submission system itself, there is no limit. There is no cap that would prevent you from submitting more than X number of presentations. But we recommend to limiting it to 2 per submitter. That just helps the selection committee, review the submissions in a focused manner. So I'm sure you'll be able to pick up top 2 of you. I'm sure you may be having more than 2 topics that you want to present on. But I would say select your top 2, which you think have the highest chances of selections and can make the most impact, and then submit 2. So more than 1, okay, but limit to 2, please. At this point in time, we are roughly about halfway mark. So at this point in time, what I would do is I would hand it over to Mohan, who would take us through the slide. But as I said, for all the slides that we have covered so far, please make notes. Please type your questions. I already see some traction on the chat over here, so that is perfect. We will take all the questions towards the end, and then please continue doing that for the rest of the presentation as well. Thank you. Over to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Manish. So I'll put some shameless plugs here. One is look at Manish's blog post from last year on building soft skills. Soon there will be a blog post on 25 tips for Ascend 2025. And on the Hub, we often have discussions. So use the Hub, participate in the forums, even submit your questions there. You never know who would answer. Carrie Hollick from OHUG and I host a podcast, and it's called Ascend with Carrie and Mohan, and we talk about submissions, how to submit a winning proposal, like the session like this, and we have special guests for every episode, so please listen to our podcast. And I guess Manish already mentioned, once you have the proposal ready, it's always good to have it reviewed by a peer, co-worker, and have their point of view. If there's any improvements that or suggestions they have, you can incorporate that. And we are a community of practitioners, professionals, users. So reach out to some past presenters and can ask them for their suggestions and reviewing your draft before you submit. And finally, if you have any questions, Mike and team, they are always there, very responsive. The OA2UG speaker program, and they can answer your questions or connect you with any one of us or any of our very popular and frequent presenters who can actually help you, mentor you through your submission process. We sincerely hope that each and every one of you submit a presentation proposal and yours is a winning one. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you, Mohan. And Manish. So, Manish kind of went through all of the kind of details of how the submittal process works and whatnot. But ultimately, you still have to have a good proposal idea to actually get selected. As great as your abstract might be, if it's not on a topic that's really relevant to people, odds are it's still not going to get selected, no matter how well written your abstract was. No matter how good your learning objectives are, it still needs to be something that actually has value to people, specifically within the OA2UG community. And so kind of want to just highlight some ideas for some submission ideas. There's a big focus this year with AI within Oracle. I'm sure, as everybody's aware, AI right now is the big hot topic in technology just in general, between things like ChatGPT and Google Gemini, Apple Intelligence. This has been a big kind of explosive new piece of technology. And I think people are still kind of trying to figure out how to really get the good return on investment from AI. That's kind of so far, lots and lots of companies have just been throwing things at the wall with AI to see what'll stick, and still trying to figure out where that real value comes from it. And so I think any topics that kind of focus on AI, and especially kind of a solution that was AI driven, would be great. So I think that would be, a really good hot topic for this year. As Manish had mentioned earlier, case studies and user success stories are always great, especially because that's a direct way of showing that, hey, this is something that actually worked that we did, and you can, have those metrics to show why it was successful. And so, those are always good topics, because if it's not just a, like a theoretical idea, it's something that really actually happened and worked well. Also, any automation with Oracle integration is always great. I think everybody's always looking at new ways to automate things, to kind of help get rid of some of the mundane tasks, or just remove some, room for human error. So any topics that you have on how you've been able to do some automation always are great. Supply chain digitization, that is definitely not my area of expertise, but anybody who is in supply chain, I'm sure would always love to hear about how they can do that. Customer experience improvement, also always a good topic. That's something that ultimately, no matter how good, something is from a technical standpoint, if the customer experience still isn't good, you're still going to kind of lose, that customer and whatnot. And so it's just always a good thing to kind of go through how you can improve that experience. Financial process harmonization. And then also emerging technologies, kind of talked at the very beginning of the slide about the focus on AI, which is obviously probably the biggest like hot topic emerging technology, but any other emerging technologies that, anyone has any expertise in, always good to talk about, especially as some companies like to stay on the cutting edge and see how they can use emerging technology to, improve their business processes. Something that's always a big thing where quite a few topics generally do get selected every year is the move from on-prem to cloud transformations, because that is a very complicated process to move from EBS to Oracle Cloud. And, every person's, kind of footprint within EBS is different. And so trying to figure out how to do that migration is pretty complicated. And so, any topics and just tips and tricks and things like that on that specific process tend to get picked. I feel like every year we generally have quite a few topics that get selected within that. And then kind of within that same type of ideas, the EBS/cloud, like kind of coexistent systems. So, whether that's you partially are an EBS, let's say maybe for the human capital management side of things, and then you're using ERP cloud, right? There's lots of different combinations that different customers use. And so going through, how those work together, something that always can have a lot of use for people. And then kind of similar again, migration to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So, a lot of customers, even who are on EBS, might want to still be using EBS, but instead of having the on-prem hardware that they're hosting themselves, move over to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Oracle has a lot of really great tools and things, since, they obviously own Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, to kind of make that migration easier. But any, kind of case studies and user success stories on making that transition are always very good. And then, Fusion offerings and the early adopter point of view, just to kind of see how people who kind of jumped into something that was brand new, how they've enjoyed it, has it been a positive impact, and those types of things. And then, as Manish had mentioned earlier, it doesn't all have to be technical topics. Within Ascend, there are several different tracks, one of them being professional development. And that one is, obviously generally not a very technical type of track. And, that kind of also fits in with the project management side of things, right? Because all of these things that we just talked about are all technical, but, moving from on-prem to cloud is going to be a huge project. So any project management presentations can be really helpful, just to help people out with really any of these other more technical sides of things, because of, the project management piece is a big deal. And any professional development topics are always great. You know, the first presentation I ever did at Ascend was actually right after I'd switched over to this type of career. And I did a presentation on how to successfully do a career change, since that's what I had just done. And, you know, that can be really helpful to people that are just starting out in their career and things like that. And really, again, you know, you want to present an idea and an experience, not a product, right? It kind of goes back to the case studies, user success stories, where it's not really, you know, this theoretical thing. You're trying to present this actual tangible asset that people can learn from. And it should be a learning session, not a sales pitch. As Manish had mentioned, you know, users tend to have higher weighting in getting selected compared to consultants. But that's not to say that consultants don't get picked, but generally, in my experience, it seems to be the ones that do it more as a learning session instead of a sales pitch that are more likely to get picked. And generally, even let's say they do get picked and then present, those were the ones that tend to get a better rating after the fact as well, when it's a learning session instead of just trying to sell a product. And yeah, I think that covers that slide. Oh, also, there is a list of training topics on the Ascend 2025 page, and when the slides are sent out, you can follow that link there to look at those training topics.
Thank you, Lee. For the next session, I'd request Mike to walk us through, please. Oh, no, actually, this is you as well, Lee. I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah. So the
My
next thing
bad.
I'm just going to go over is why you should submit. I mean, I'm hoping that everybody on this call is already interested in submitting, since you already are on the call with us. But there are quite a few benefits to getting selected. You get a heavily discounted registration for the conference itself. I mean, I don't know what the exact number is this year, but it is always a very large discount. And so that, you know, if you are trying to, you know, have your company pay for you to go to the conference, it's a much easier value sell when you can say like, hey, for one, I'm presenting, and two, the cost is significantly down. So can help with getting the travel approved and things like that. You know, also just the networking, and it's fun to get to present. And it's nice to be able to share the knowledge that you have. You know, everybody has expertise in different areas, and being able to share that knowledge with other people is a fun and valuable experience. You know, you can also showcase that on your professional profile, you know, things like LinkedIn publications, things like that, which can always help you with, you know, career moves and advancement as you move through your career. You also get to connect with the best in class of the Oracle community. You know, it kind of ties in a little bit to the networking piece of this, where, you know, not only will you have the opportunity at the conference to meet other people, but, you know, there's going to be people who might go to your session who have questions and things for you. You talk to them after the presentation, and, you know, it's a new connection that you've made. You also have the chance to win the Star Presenter of the Year award, which, you know, is definitely something else that, you know, can showcase on your professional profile. And so, you know, just a good opportunity for additional kind of career advancement. And then you can, you know, embark and elevate your thought leadership journey. You know, if you know something well enough to teach it to other people, that generally means you have a pretty good grasp of it and are really knowledgeable in that area. And so I think it's a good way to just kind of brush up on the areas that you do have expertise in, and really prove to yourself and other people that you know, are an expert in that area. So that kind of wraps it up. So then, yeah, I'll pass this on to Mike.
Well, I'd like to just quickly add here, we have a couple prime examples of why benefits for getting selected. We've got Mahesh here and yourself, Lee. I remember when you first submitted papers. Lee, you submitted a couple of papers, you know, spoke at Ascend, or yeah, back in the day. And now 2 jobs later, you're out of Alaska and in Texas, and very successful. And now you're on the OATUG board of directors. That's a huge benefit for getting selected to speak at this conference. And Manesh too. Also, you've submitted a bunch of papers, gotten selected, and now you're an Oracle Ace. So those are just prime examples of not only submitting for the conference, you know, being good, you know, being a valued member of OATUG as well. So thank you for that. That's a definite benefit. You guys kind of are the prime examples for that.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
And
Mike.
actually, just to add on to that, you know, the very first Ascend I went to, my company actually, there was another person on my team and they only had enough money to send one of us to the conference. And the reason I ended up being the one who got to go was I had a paper selected. And so they figured since, you know, I was presenting that I should be the one who got to go to the conference. So it was a direct, you know, tangible, I wouldn't have even gotten to go had I not gotten selected. So it's definitely, you know, great to submit and share your knowledge and can help you out a lot.
Great points, Lee and Mike. Thank you so much. 100% agree with what you said.
All right, now moving on to important information. When we go through the selection process, these are definitely some of the things that we would like for you to avoid. The very first bullet there, you know, creating something that's sales and sales orientated is a huge negative. I am pulling, I'm currently going over some of the session survey data from last year. And I'm pulling together star presenters of the year information. And so I listened to some of the sessions that are rated very highly. And I do remember one just a couple days ago where the session started off with, you know, it was a consultant. And he introduced himself. The very first thing he says, he's not going to have any sales information in this presentation. He wasn't going to put his, you know, he mentioned where he's from and what company he worked for, but had nothing in there. And just starting off that way, you could tell why his session was rated so highly. Just kind of keeping sales completely out of it. And just, he said, we're just going to focus on education and educating everyone in the room. So that's something that he did that was correct. And this next second bullet came up kind of in the Q&A also. I answered it. With the exhibiting company, you never want to place your name or title in the title, abstract, and of course objectives. If your consulting company name is in there, voters are instructed to lower their rating of your session if those are in there. You can put user company names in if you're, you know, if you really, you know, helped out Starbucks or Amazon, you know, fix a problem. If they're a strong user company, that will kind of sell attendees to your session as well. Remember, for any sessions that you submit, you're really going, this year, you're going to be going up against 30 other sessions. So you want to have a good pitch for getting people to your sessions as well. The third bullet is this, you know, we'll receive over 1,000 proposals for Ascend. And there's always people that don't spell check or do grammar. So I just shake my head and kind of laugh a little bit because I don't fix anything. So when those go out to the voters, they're going to be reading all your spelling and grammar errors as well. Make sure you have your session placed in the proper track. We will go through sessions before they actually head to voters, just to make sure they are on the proper tracks. But it just helps us out if your session is placed in the proper track. Again, avoid plagiarism. This is something that comes up every year where I get one speaker saying the speaker submitted a session that's kind of verbatim what I wrote a few months ago. So just try to avoid that. You know, just make sure they're your own thoughts and ideas, just something that's not very good. And then lastly, if you're a SIG or you're an OHUG community interested in presenting, you can't just simply say I'm having a SIG meeting. You really want to say that you really want to put in a full title and abstract for those SIG meetings. You know, just how the cost SIG helped, you know, several clients save some money. You definitely want to put a strong title and abstract in there, and just make sure you put SIG or community if it's for OHUG in the title. Next up, we have the key dates. Friday, January 24th, and that is next week. The end of next week, call for papers closes. So that is a hard deadline. I will keep it open through the weekend. But come Monday of that week, it will be officially closed. We won't be accepting any more presentations. Again, something that Lee had covered earlier. It's just a title, abstract, and some learning objectives, which you really do need to think about what you're putting in there, but that's all you really need. The week of March 3rd, we will send out acceptances, declines, alternates to presenters. So that's a good deadline to keep note of. The week of April 2nd, we'll have sessions scheduled and listed on there. As you can see, Friday, the March 28th is when speakers need to register. You can see why we do this. We have speakers we make sure speakers are registered for the conference. They've spent some money, you've had to pay that little speaker fee. So we know you're going to be there. We know you're not just going to submit and not show up. That's why Friday, the 28th is the registration deadline. And then April 2nd, we can actually confirm the session schedule and start listing them out so people can see when you're presenting and what you have to do. May 14th is when presentations are due. So remember, for the call for presentations, I think people may think it's overwhelming, but really just a title, abstract, and learning objectives. Then if you get accepted, you have till May to finish that presentation off. And then lastly, the Ascend Conference, June 8th through the 11th in Orlando, Florida at the Rosen Shingle Creek. It is an absolutely stunning property. It's one of the best ones we've been to. I'm very excited. I've been there a couple of times, and it's got a beautiful golf course. It's got beautiful facilities. We're planning just a spectacular conference. I'm so happy with how our agenda is working out this year, the parties that we're going to be having. It's just going to be just a lot of fun. All right, the Ascend podcast. You can find this on the Call for Papers presentation, Call for Papers page for Ascend. There's a really good one there. You got emerging leaders, professional development. We also have a Call for Papers one there as well. So I always recommend people checking out the podcast. If you just want to listen to something while you're working, it's something great. We share a lot of great information there. And then this is kind of a summary of the sessions from last year. The events actually, I think, was a little bit higher than 275. I think we crested over 300. We're planning for over 400 at this next conference. We have added some rooms. We're doing more hands-on labs, some workshops, meet the experts, turbo talks. So we are going to be doing a lot of sessions and events at this next conference. And then finally, I'll take this last slide. Just if you have any additional questions, you see everyone's email there. I will be emailing everyone from this that's attended this, so you'll have my email address. If you need any additional questions, you can always ask me. Yeah, Manish and Lee, Mohan are always great to talk to if you have questions about your topic. If you're just curious on how your topic will sound or resonate with the community, those would be great people to talk to. All right, and this is it, man. Manish, you want to close it out?
Thank you so much, Mike. This is great. Thank you for walking us through this. So that brings us to the end of the presentation and leaves us about 6 minutes for any questions and answers. So I see there were a few questions in chat. Are there any other questions that you would like to discuss here? Please post them in chat and we'll address them. Or Mohan, Lee, is there anything else from your side that you would like to add as we conclude this presentation?
Yes, one of the questions we get is how much of AI, Gen AI, we can use ChatGPT or similar platforms for creating the presentation abstracts and all. So here's what we have found based on our review of presentation proposals. If you use like ChatGPT or similar platform to write your entire abstract, the abstract will be great, like reading great and all, but often it doesn't have the substance in it.
Mm.
So what I think would be better is you first write the draft version of your abstract based on like case studies or something you want to share, and then use any of the Gen AI to, for example, your initial version of the draft version is 1,000 characters and you have to make it 800. So you can use some prompts and saying, okay, just make sure important points are covered or something, but make my abstract 800 words. But don't use the forums or those platforms to write the entire abstract, because the abstract reads great, but they are not the Oracle experts, right? You are the Oracle expert. So the abstract, even though it's a great piece of literature, but not so much relevant or voted highly by our panels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. Are there any other questions from anybody that we can take at this point in time? Let me take a quick look at the chat.
I think everything's been answered. I answered a couple in the Q&A. Someone asked about plagiarism, if they needed to cite references. You don't need to cite references for anything. Just use your best judgment. You know what you're kind of doing, and if it's original, just go ahead and put that in. Again, I think Mohan mentioned once you're done, sending a lot of information in the ChatGPT is always great to see what it kind of spits out, see if it kind of triggers anything, any additional information that you might have left out of. Also, I guess when creating slides, I think PowerPoint has got some great new tools. When you do create the slides and you're accepted, you can use that to kind of actually practice giving your presentation. That'll be more for the speaker orientation once you're selected.
And next week, we are hosting a professional development week. And there is a session on how to be an exceptional presenter. So please do attend sessions next week on Professional Development Week. And that's one of the sessions you might be interested. If you're selected to present at Ascend, tips from that session would be helpful to you.
Yes, remember that Professional Development Week is free to all OA2UG members.
To add to what Mohan, Mike, and Lee mentioned, when you're submitting an abstract, make sure to use the email ID associated with your corporate membership if you're already a corporate member. So make sure you use that so that the selection committee knows that you're submitting from an organization which is already a member. So that actually helps in getting selected as well. It does give you some brownie points.
That's a great point. I know that we just placed all the Ascend 2024 into the knowledge base. So we did tag everyone that had their membership profile in there. So you were tagged if you submitted a session, you got selected, you presented at Ascend 2024, and now it's in the knowledge base and it's tagged under your profile. It's super important that everything is tagged and correctly, because we do a lot of people will submit sessions for Ascend not using their membership email. It's always good to check your profile and make sure what your email is in there as well.
All right, I guess we're at the end of the presentation. We are right at the top of the hour. So unless there are any other questions, we can close this webinar. Once again, thank you very much for your time in attending this webinar. I hope this was useful, and we look forward to several submissions from this group and everybody else who's going to look at the webinar later on. We're looking for an overwhelming response, and we are banking on all of you to help us make Ascend 2025 a resounding success. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.